I want to talk to you in a very general way about summaries and how to write a summary. I want to keep it general because ideally I want the information I share with you here to be such that you can take it and apply it to all sorts of articles or events or ideas or whatever it is that you need to summarize for a reader. Okay, so we're basically talking how to turn this into an essay, and maybe it'll be a short essay, maybe it'll be a bit longer depending on the material you need to summarize. So if the thing is a 40-page article, I mean, you might need 4 pages to summarize it, or you might need two. You definitely shouldn't take 15 to 20 pages to summarize a 40-page article. You're including way too much information. Summaries should be 20 to 15 to 10% of the length of the original. And sometimes summaries are actually shorter. In fact, when you're writing a book review, for example, you might be taking a 300-page book and you might be writing a summary and a review that altogether might be 5 or 4 pages. So a lot of times summaries come to us in terms of an essay, a couple paragraphs or a couple pages, depending again on the length of what you're summarizing. But it should never even begin to approach the length of the original. Okay, so let's just put this in sort of say a YouTube video or a video situation where you are maybe recording videos of yourself critiquing movies, right? And the movie was 2 hours long. Well, your review of this movie should not be an hour. It shouldn't be 30 minutes. Maybe it should be 7 minutes or 5 minutes, right? So we all realize that there's a condensing going on. So what's very important is a couple things. One, you need to understand what your assessor wants. Now, in school, that's your teacher, right? But I don't want to just always limit this to a teacher. It might be your editor, it might be your boss, it might be someone else. I don't know. Your supervisor. So someone's going to be looking at your work and saying thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever, right? That's your assessor. You're going to assess it. Now you got to figure out what this person wants. Does the person want a 1 sentence or 2 sentence summary? Because you can do that, right? Now you're going to have to really think, right? What you're looking for, that 1 sentence that says it all in terms of like the core message, of that article. And if it's a book, that's really hard to do. I mean, I would not trust a 1 sentence summary of a book. Maybe a 1 paragraph might even, at that point, I might be willing to entertain that, but not a 1 sentence. But for an article or an essay, maybe an essay you find in a magazine, like, a couple pages long, I think maybe you can do that in 1 sentence. So sometimes people are looking for a 1 sentence summary. All right, just make sure you figure out what the people want, because that's one type. The regular, much more common is again what we were just discussing: the couple paragraphs, couple pages, about 5% to 10% of the length of the original. Obvious condension, but we're not talking about just 1 sentence, right? So that's in fact what I'm asking you to do. I want you to write a couple paragraphs summarizing the article that I've given you to look at. Now, the next thing you need to consider is, what type of thing are you summarizing? Does it have only one layer of meaning to it? So one level, if you will, the literal level. So, you go online and you read an article about Bitcoin, and then, or about, some sporting event, the Olympics, whatever, maybe something happened in track and field, and you're going to summarize that event for your writers. Listen, that's a literal thing. I mean, there's just the facts, right? What happened, where, when, how, that sort of thing, right? So there's only really one level there of meaning. It's a very common level. It's the literal level. We can just read it, understand it, and let's go. So that type of summary, all you really need is to condense it, and to you're just dealing with one type of meaning. But sometimes you get things, texts, artifacts, whatever, that have more than one layer to them. They have a couple of meanings to them. So maybe if you go to an art museum and you're looking at a famous exhibit, or or you're watching a movie and this movie is really the story of life, or the story of whatever, coming of age, or loss, or something like that. So a good movie like that will allow you to discuss one level of detail, right? One level of information, like who were the characters, where was it set, what did they do, right? I'm going to call that the literal level, right? Because these are the actual things and facts and dates you run into as you engage with this on that level, right? As you just learn the story. But then that movie might have, in fact, a deeper message to it, right? So that's when you would need to interpret it. Okay. So that would take you down to another part of the summary, the interpretation part. Now, a lot of articles and nonfiction books, for example, narratives, nonfiction. When I say nonfiction narrative, I mean a book that covers a story or an event or a history, like a biography or something. They're not going to have all these different layers to it. It's just going to be that first layer, right, of information. But then you might read, say, The Scarlet Letter, or Moby Dick, or Hamlet, or some other work of literature, which has those two layers on it, right? You learn the character names and what's actually happening there in that place and with those people. But then you begin to learn how to find out and to see the deeper message, right? And then you might transition then to a new paragraph in your summary and say, this story really is about overcoming extreme difficulty, losing hope, and being rescued. That might be what it is. So I'm thinking about a movie called Arctic, where the movie is a survival movie about someone who survives in extreme conditions for a long time, almost gets rescued, thinks he's failed, lies down to die, and I don't want to give a spoiler alert, but he finally does get rescued. I just spoiled it, didn't I? The helicopter comes in the background. You can see it landing in the background as the movie shuts. And another movie called All Is Lost, starring Robert Redford, is also like that. It's kind of a slow movie to get to, but once you see that, you won't forget it, because it has two layers to it. It has a literal layer and a figurative layer. All right. So sometimes you're going to have to summarize both layers if you get an article like that, or a story like that, or a poem like that, or a movie like that, or a song like that, or whatever. So see, summaries can take two different shapes. Sometimes it can be really simple, and you're just dealing with one layer. So here's an article about distance learning, or about the CRISPR technology to change a gene. Read it, summarize it. There's no deeper level there. I mean, it might be complicated, it might be technical, but what you see is what you get. It's about this technology that changes your gene, or something like that, right? So that's one type of summary. Let's just go ahead and call that a literal summary, or summary. And most of your teachers are going to use that word to refer to that. But then you might have that different other type of summary where you have those two layers, right? When you're looking at a movie and you have to give the story of the movie, but then you have to give the deeper meaning. I think those are two parts, best handled in maybe two sections. One paragraph here, two paragraphs here, two paragraphs here, two paragraphs here, whatever, but two different sections. Let's call this the interpretation summary, because it involves first the literal aspect, and then what makes it unique from the first type is that it has an interpretation side to it. Okay, so I'm going to ask you to write a summary. You're going to have to figure out which one of those two I'm talking about. All right, and a few more things. I would say it's really good strategy if you just assume that your reader or your assessor has no clue about that article or that story or that movie. Okay, so don't take it for granted that they've seen it or read it. I know you're writing to me. I know I've read what you've read, but I still want the name of the article, the author, the date it was published, what it was about. Okay, you have to pretend I don't know. Because if you're actually writing for a magazine or a newspaper, you can't assume that everyone that reads your story there has also, seen that movie or whatever. So you have to assume that your reader doesn't know what you're talking about, and you have to bring them up to speed. Okay, I think that's always a good strategy. Um, and then the second thing is you're going to need to put a title on this. Usually, your work in college is you're going to have to put titles. Come up with a good title. Spend a little time thinking about it a little bit, and don't just call it, summary of the story or whatever. See what you can do with that. It's a creative space, but it's an important space because often the very first thing that someone's going to see of your work is the title, and unfortunately, many times that's all they're going to look at. So you have to treat that space with respect. And I would much rather see you attempt at a creative title and maybe fail a little bit at it than just try to take a very easy and well-worn path and just say summary of this article that I read or this poem, summary of poem. No, spend a little time trying to put a good title up there. So, hey, I hope this video helped. If you have any questions, be sure to reach out to me.